Hey, and welcome to our council update. I'm Vince Higgins with the council, and today our guest from District 6 is none other than the first African-American elected to council, Nichole L. Rogers. Welcome, Nichole.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited because you have been hot. You have been really working the circuit here. You're the most active councilor I've seen on our web pages, and I want to commend you on that.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.
So on these council updates, we like to update the public about what's going on in your district. And when you pick 3 good topics, let's start with the East Central Road diet.
Okay.
What's that diet?
Yeah, so the East Central Road diet is really important because when I first came into office, 6 months ago, it's only been 6 months, feels like longer, but 6 months ago, I started looking at all the projects that already had funding attached to them, trying to figure out what the shortfall was for that funding so that we can then advocate during the legislature to finish these projects. I found out that the East Central corridor, specifically between Louisiana and Eubank, has been listed on the Department of Transportation worst corridors for pedestrian deaths since 2014. And so I can see through looking at our financial statements that we've started getting a lot of funding around 2014 when we hit that list. But nothing has been done to actually do the work to make the road better so that we can see our pedestrian deaths be lowered.
Okay.
And so what's exciting is we were able to go to the legislature, get some of the last little bit of funding that we needed to be able to start that project. And so we're hoping it'll be started by the end of the year, the fall, because I would like to see that done before the centennial, the Route 66 100th centennial anniversary coming up in 2026. We're going to have pedestrians coming from all over the world to drive the entire route. And so we need to do it now while it's funded, because we know things just get more expensive. And so if we don't push to get it done now, number one, I'm afraid of how many more lives we will be lost if we don't. And that's the most important and the reason we need these upgrades. And what's exciting is it'll do things like create buffers so that if a pedestrian steps off the curb on Central and let's say San Mateo, right, or Central Louisiana, then they're not right in the middle of the lane, which they will be now. We're already starting to install hawk lights so people don't have to walk all the way the mile down the street block to get to the crosswalk, to help with some of that. Putting in, safety measures for our bikers who bike down Central Corridor. And so there's a lot of lighting also, art, we have a lot of lighting down the medians for our art buses, but we need pedestrian lights as well along the sidewalks. So we'll be doing those upgrades as well.
That's a repeated refrain I hear across the city about lighting. Some people complain about too much lighting, others complain about not enough. So where is the measure here on the East Central corridor?
Yeah, well, we always make sure we work with our local activists like the Night Sky group that make sure our lights aren't impeding our beautiful skies at night, which is important. And so we have ordinances and things in our code enforcement and things to make sure we're balancing that. But we also know from public safety research that lighting up a neighborhood in certain areas where you see high crime actually deters that crime because they're looking for the dark spots to do the things.
Exactly.
Right? And so for me, it's also a public safety measure because there are a lot of people that live in my district that are transit specifically dependent. And so we need to be building cities and redeveloping our district so that it's walkable and that it's safe for folks to walk also.
Walkable and safe, and investment in communities is also important,
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
So that brings me to the second topic that you want to speak of here, and that's the Office of Financial Empowerment.
Yes.
So that's a special project to you. Tell us about your involvement with the Office of Financial Empowerment.
Sure. So this really started in my previous role as the African American liaison for Mayor Keller in equity and inclusion, and really got inspired to work on the racial wealth gap and coming up with initiatives to close the racial wealth gap. And when I was looking and researching what other cities were doing, they had an Office of Financial Empowerment with some programming that we do have, like our Bank On program that helps residents become adequately banked. And why that's important is because, as a financial planner, if you're not adequately banked, you may miss out on things like stimulus. During COVID, folks who didn't have their tax returns going to their bank account could not get that stimulus as fast as I got mine, right? If you did your taxes through H&R Block and got one of the little cards, right? H&R Block got rid of that data, and those cards, the money had been spent from your tax return, so the government couldn't give you your stimulus to that card.
Wow.
So millions of people, low-income folks, lost out on, or their stimulus were delayed or never came because they weren't adequately banked. So even important things like that. So Bank on Albuquerque, we already have that, right? But it just wasn't under the Office of Financial Empowerment. We also already have financial navigators that help connect folks, average citizens, because we have economic development, but that's not for anybody who is not a business owner. Now, don't get me wrong, we still need economic development, okay? So business owners, don't think I'm anti-small business. That's not the case. But we also need financial empowerment for those who are not business owners. So we're talking about, they also have consumer protection under financial empowerment. We have a component of consumer protection who's supposed to make sure that if there's landlord-tenant disputes, if there's a landlord that is violating our law of source of income, saying I don't accept vouchers, right? They're the department that actually goes and enforces and makes sure that we have that information of who is doing that in our community and providing resources to the community about how to overcome those types of things. But that's not in an Office of Financial Empowerment. As a matter of fact, I'm upset a little bit about our teams wanting to combine civil rights and consumer protection together in one position. I do not agree that one position can handle both of those things well.
I see.
And so we have some work to do there. But it's exciting because once we pull all of these programs underneath a true Office of Financial Empowerment, then we can do things like guaranteed basic income pilots, which is in our legislation that the community wanted us to reinvest our cannabis tax money into universal basic income. So we can do a pilot for that, which is something I've talked about for 2 or 3 years about we need a universal basic income pilot, and our mayor actually signed up for it in 2020 with the mayor of St. Paul. So we have the infrastructure, we have the tax dollars. Now we'll have an office and a program who can actually make those things happen.
Right. And so your office and the council specifically will be looking for different outcomes from the Office of Financial Empowerment. What are some of the measurables that you want to see?
Yeah, so right now we're really designing and dreaming of what this office, right now it's a little program, but we're hoping to scale it up to a whole office. And so right now what that looks like for us is we did get the technical assistance grant to be able to build the strategic plan. So we're doing that right now. Community will be able to weigh in on that as well as we build the strategic plan. After that, Cities for Financial Empowerment asked us to apply for the implementation grant. So after we have the strategy, they will give us the funding to implement it. So to me, those are two big measurables that we need to get those grants, utilize them well, get our strategic plan done, start implementing that strategic plan, and then we can begin to work with equity and inclusion on the programs that we can use the cannabis tax for, like universal guaranteed basic income.
So that'll give the Office of Financial Empowerment a great foundation to start from,
absolutely,
and measurables that you can look on from here going forward.
And some of the measurables specifically that I want to see is that we increase. I'm working on still a home ownership program for the Black community to increase Black home ownership. We've been historically left out of access to capital, low valuations on our home appraisals that have amounted to about $356 billion lost in our community alone for home valuations. And so for the Black community, buying a home has not been a huge generational wealth building thing for us. And so we're working on, I want to see down payment assistance. There's so many things that we can do to really help people out of poverty, because that's what this is about. Is we know from research that where local spending is higher, life expectancy is higher.
Life expectancy is lengthened when you have activities and process that helps the people.
Yes, like access to fresh food, which we need in my district, right? Like all kinds of things green spaces and parks.
You mentioned green spaces, Councilor. That's excellent, because the next topic was Mesa Verde.
Yeah.
So tell us about the transformation that's in place there.
Yeah, Mesa Verde is exciting. I live right around the corner from Mesa Verde Park, and so this is my neighborhood park. And the Mesa Verde community center. I have to give a shout out to that community center because it is a well-functioning, well-used community center. It's really a hub for that neighborhood, and we haven't invested in the park around it. We need, obviously, a big facelift to that park, and so we are applying for a legacy grant because it is one of our older parks, so that we can put the much-needed investment into that park. We will keep the basketball courts because I've been getting lots of calls that why is the city removing basketball courts from the park remodels, right? Well, that's a great question. We need soccer, we need futsal and pickleball, but let's not get rid of basketball. So basketball is going to stay. We're going to redo the soccer, and there's a futsal soccer going in. We'll have lots of amazing upgrades, trees, the grass, more places to park, not park, but more places to sit and picnic tables and things like that, so families can use it together.
Right, and that's family friendly.
You know, it is. People, you hear a lot about parks in our community, and I think that's why they have been disinvested in, is because we don't, there's so many unsheltered folks, they're going to just mess it up, so let's not invest there. And it's actually, the research shows the opposite, the complete opposite, that when you infuse green spaces and trees and activities into a community, it actually heals the community.
Right. The more use and more activities that people use in the community on that space will push the other undesirables out.
Absolutely. And that's I think that we need that, but we also have to couple that with, services and help for folks to help them up. But also folks who aren't doing the right things in our communities, we also need that.
Well, it sounds like we have plenty of stuff to talk about in the coming months for these council district updates from District 6.
Yes.
Councilor, I'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us and with the public for our council discussions about our districts. Thank you again, and we look forward to the next segment.
Yeah.
And you too can look forward to the next segment. Tune in.